Uh, Good morning and good afternoon to everyone present here. I welcome you all for this book discussion on the book Hong Kong. I hope you can see. I think I have put it. This is the English copy and this is the Marathi copy of the book. Before I go on with the event, I would like our head of the Department of Sociology to say a few words in the introduction first.
Maybe we can, stop for the sharing of the slide, and I can, put him on a spotlight. Means everybody
Okay.
can see. Wait. Spotlight. Wait. This one. Okay, please, Professor Ganesha. Actually, and I need to.
Yes, I am here. But
Okay, please.
What-
Thank
what-
you. Thank you for joining us.
yeah, I am here only. Okay.
We use put video off, Professor Ganesha.
Yes, I think he's put his video off.
It will take a lot of bandwidth. Therefore, I am not starting video. Okay.
Okay. Please, yeah, give us your greetings. We would be very
Thank you very
grateful.
much. Please carry on with the meet. Okay. Very
Yeah.
nice. Okay. Please carry.
Okay, so the aim behind this whole event, Meet the Hong Kong Authors, was to share the voices that are there or the writings that have been a part of the whole Hong Kong project and the book with young students and scholars in Goa. So the whole idea was that through having these talks and discussions with the authors, it would familiarize the students with the innovative pedagogic methods that were introduced by deceased Alito Siqueira, who was associate professor at the Department of Sociology at Goa University. And it was through his, this whole initiative with exploring and introducing different ways of teaching, learning and doing research that we have this whole project. So it would also, so this book first of all has created a kind of a space where hidden memories, feelings, that have caused a lot of hurting experiences like insults, they have become a part of discussion within the academia. And I'm very sure that many students, teachers will relate to the experiences that have been shared by the authors in the book. And they may say, like, oh, this is how I feel, or I have felt like this before. So by creating a discussion around this book, it would in fact enhance or create even much larger space within the academia. First of all, to have these kinds of perspectives in teaching and learning, which is the really need of the hour, I feel, because Hong Kong is about celebrating or cherishing the difference that we all carry, and we have students and faculties who come from varied backgrounds in the education system. So it will create a kind of a space, where there is a link between your personal experience and discussions that are happening within the classroom. So this was the aim behind having this whole event. And so in fact, this whole event would not have been possible if Professor Kyoko had not, taken the initiative to, start these kinds of discussions. So this is the first one that we are having, and we hope to have more in other institutes as well, like colleges and any other space that is available for us to conduct these discussions. So before I ask Professor Kyoko Matsukawa to speak a little bit about the work, a small introduction to her. She is a professor of cultural anthropology at the Department of Sociology, Faculty of Letters, Konan University, Kobe, Japan. She is also the director of International Exchange Center there, and she has been very closely associated with the book, with the whole project of Hong Kong, which was, in fact, I forgot to mention, was initially introduced as a blog. And we've got lots of responses to the blog, which have also been, included as a part of the book towards the end. So she has been very closely associated. She was a PhD student here in Goa, and she has been, Professor Alito was her local guide while she was doing her PhD. So she shared a very close bond, first of all, with Professor Alito, and they have also been involved in having teaching and learning and including these pedagogic experiences and explorations beyond the classroom. So, and she's been very grateful, or she has offered her Zoom account to have this whole event. So I request Professor Kyoko to go on with the further event.
Okay. Fabita, thank you for introducing me. And it's my great honor to be a part of this event. And I also would like to thank Hong Kong team, Fabita, and actually, behind all this, especially Salid and, Gaspar. He always loved to be behind, but I would like to especially mention his name. As Fabita, told, I was a PhD student when I met Alito for the first time, and it was the year of 2000. And at the time, Professor Ganesh, you were head of the department. He was still young, and I was in my 20s and young PhD student, and I landed Goa without knowing anything about Goa. And Professor Alito guided me to explore Goan society. And, I spent 1.5 years to do research on Konkani language issue. Still today, that language issue of Konkani, Marathi, and English, they are going on. And anyway, after I finished my PhD research, I went back to Japan, and every year I came back to Goa to carry on my research. And then I think it was in the year 2006. Even before that, Alito and I exchanged the idea that we would like to do some joint research or joint project. And I wrote in that small essay, which was included in that volume of Hong Kong. I wrote that we started a joint research program about exchanging ideas about locality between Goa and Nara. At the time, I was with Nara University in Japan. Then one day, Alito let me know about the data storytelling. And that data storytelling is how to create a small video of yourself, your story. And Alito could, emphasize on, storytelling and, people's own experiences and beyond class pedagogy. He always wanted to focus on, real experiences. And he wanted to, bring out the knowledge out of people's experiences, and he wanted to put those experiences in context of Goan society, and that's what he did in his classes but he wanted to, pull students out of the class, kind of education. Not only reading text, he wanted the students to experience their own life and let them speak out about themselves. That was, specific way of education. And that was, all the things were put into that volume of Hong Kong. And you can learn a lot from that book. So from today's, talks of Hong Kong authors, I'm sure that you can learn a lot. What kind of experiences they had with Alito's education and teaching, and what they discovered from their experiences. So I myself was looking forward to listening to their stories. Anyway, I spoke too much, and I would like to welcome now the Hong Kong authors. So, Pavitra, from now on, please chair the first group.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Kyoko. Our first author who will speak is Dr. Sachin Morais. He presently works as assistant professor at Parvatibai Chogre College at the Department of Sociology. He has very diverse academic interests which include history, culture, diaspora, with a focus on evolution of Goan society. His other interests lie in cycling, traveling, adventure, singing and sports. So he finds himself very much dissolved in observing and thinking through empiricism about the life of his people. For this particular essay, he has put a stone on his heart and untied the ropes on his mind to reveal the ground realities of women in the absence of their men. So over to you, Sachin.
Thank you, Pavita, for that wonderful introduction. And the last line that you stated in the context of, I have put a big stone on my heart to unravel the stories of the women. And of course, with this I would like
Krishna Kumar Bandolkar to shut his mic because some disturbance. Mr. Krishna Kumar Bandolkar, his mic is on.
Okay, I will, mute him. Okay, now I think he muted himself. Thank you.
Yeah. To start off from there, let me take you back to the journey of writing this essay, because I want to be very precise and not take away somebody else's time in this discussion, because we have very little time on this process. So the first question, when I thought of this, it happened in a subtle form, because we were part of this research methodology course which was undertaken by Professor Alito, and in that process he happened to tell us, you need to pick up a topic, and this was way back in 2005. I have started here first, which is coincidentally also that I was the first student out of all the essays in which Alito tried to trigger something in one's mind. And what happened during that class was, he told us, pick up something that you can relate to from your life. And in that emerged, where there was a person who was invited to the department from Mumbai, and she spoke about the use of qualitative research method, specifically a method of oral histories that could be used to unravel so much from a person or an actor's perspective that you could put in. And when she came and went in that same year, I felt this could be a good method if I'm doing something in the future in the context of a dissertation. And while I was simultaneously thinking of a topic, I came and one day shared with Alito, because probably I knew he was going to be my guide for the destination, and I told him that I want to work on something to do with women in my Vado, which is actually, you translated in English as a ward. And in this Vado, I said there is something, a very unique situation wherein you have the men who are not in the house and the women are back home taking care and managing everything to do with the responsibilities in the absence of men. And the first question he put to me, and you will find that this is ironical in the context of the rest of the authors who have written, that all the authors after me are women and I'm the only man amongst them. And he said, like, why are you interested in something which a woman should write rather than a man? And I paused for some time and I wondered. And that was basically, that takes me and connects me to the theme of this book, that is How Corn. And it like relates to us and asks, it gives you a deeper, like introspection and reflection into your journey, that who are you? And when I was asked this question, I said, I am also a woman. And he was like spellbound to hear this answer from me, that why is this man saying that I am also a woman? And that was something that triggered the curiosity into this process of like, could this be a topic of dissertation? So when he asked me that question, like, why did you say that you are also women? And I could situate and locate myself in the context of the other women who were there in the Vado, because I would basically tend to relate to them, especially when we used to have these meetings. We have something like cross committees which are there in the Vados, where there is a Holy Cross chapel or something like that. And in that given space, we tend to meet the women over there. And mostly what would happen is, there were no men for those meetings. There would be only women coming there and sitting. And I was like only the second man who was sitting along with them. And when I spoke to them, I discovered like my life was very much similar to them, because my mother was also not at home. She was working abroad, trying to earn something, because my father had passed away like just 3-4 years before I could join university. So that's somewhere when I was in the in the 10th standard, he passed away. And it was like she was playing the role of a breadwinner, which usually the men are doing in the village that I belong to. And I was playing the role of what the other women are playing. So I was in the house. I had another 2 brothers to take care of and look after, who were younger to me. And I was doing all the other work like cooking and taking care of them, going to my college and, like doing all these things. And also somehow getting empathetically and understanding into their lives. And in this process, when I explained this to Alito and told him that this is the reason why I want to do this, because there is so much that is there that is hidden in the lives of these women, and basically it has a lot of history to it, because the Vado that I belong to, the village that I belong to, and the whole locality around what we call it as AVCC, that is Asolna, Veni, Kumpoli, this whole of this place, it has 170 odd years of historical baggage to it. Like when you look at this whole phenomena of men working elsewhere and women being at home as trying to continue the whole responsibilities which usually men is to do at home. And in that process, I realized that this would be a great topic to research through, indirectly also telling my own self into this, like, locating myself. So this was the evolution, like I would say, like this contributed to the evolution of this topic. But thereupon, the methodology, as I said earlier, came about from the from the dialogue that we had in one of the sessions with the guest speakers who was called into the Department of Sociology by the departmental head, Professor Ganesha, who is here, and she was invited for sharing about case histories as a method for doing qualitative research. And I found like, why not take this up, because most of the women there would share in their oral histories and present about themselves, okay? And this was shared with Professor Alito, and he said, yes, you could do this. And that's how like began this thing. And the first thing was like, what is it that is driving you to do this study? Like, what is that question? What is it that's something that you want to find out from, like doing this study? And I was like, I have a very broad question, and the question was, I want to find out that what is the experience of women in the absence of men? And being very open-ended question, a very exploratory type of a question, where there is no certain answer to this, he felt like this methodology was best suited, and I strongly also felt the same, that because you're not quantifying anything, definitely you want to get into the depth of this whole thing and bring out this experience in front of the rest of the people to see. And I realized that, not to say so, that I couldn't find anything directly that was written earlier in the context of this. Of course, there were some mentions made to this, like in some sort of plays or theaters that, we have this popular plays in Goa where people would talk about these things, but it would never come to the fore. And I wanted to also highlight on something very specific, which I found that somehow was crying for, like, listen to my voice, Meri Awaaz Suno in Hindi you would say. And it was crying for that attention, the voice of certain women who felt, lacking that love, that care, that affection. That was a certain area which was untouched for in the academic field, even in sociology, if you talk about even anthropology, at least where India or Goa was concerned, this was something that was not there, where even something to do with your sexuality was being spoken of in a writing like this. So when this happened, and when I started to, go by the whole process of trying to interview the women and understand from them, they were like actors from the village, like I would put this in terms of Weberian sense, like I'm trying to unravel the perspective of themselves into this, okay, and bring it forth. And what I found there was like, there was so much to it. And what emerged from these were like different themes. And I found that there was some sort of a similarity in what I'm doing, and there was another study which I came across in a review of literature, and that was by Miss Leela Gulati, who had done a similar thing in Kerala, and was somehow I could relate to like what was done there and what was done here. Okay. But what came through was shortcoming there was like, as I was telling you, this topic that was not touched upon was something to do with where women felt somewhere something lacking. And therefore you will see that the highlight of the essay was negotiating male migration. The topic is negotiating. Why would somebody say negotiating male migration and the experience? Because the point was that historically this is a phenomenon that has been there for quite some time. And in spite of knowing this fact in the villages or in the wards where this thing happened, like women were having no other options but to marry men who were migrating, who were like elsewhere, and they had to be at home. So knowing this fact, yet they got married. And therefore what was something very great that women were doing. Okay, so that was the point. And keeping that in mind, you will see the title is as negotiating, because you were trying to negotiate yourself as a woman, like playing roles which were not taken earlier before by a woman. You're playing those roles and you're trying to negotiate with that and somehow trying to do away with some of your own aspirations in this process. And therefore, that is what like I could also relate to in my own life, that what was happening with me. So I don't want to get into the detail of that right away. But let me come to this point of where there was some sort of disagreements between me and Professor Alito. So what happened there was that suddenly when these case histories were being recorded and we were coming up with the themes like, which we could codify and then put it across in a very synchronized, systematic form, there was many things which were very explicitly stated, like having something to do with relationships, extramarital affairs. You're talking about these things, you're writing about these things in a very explicit form. And I had actually done that. I had actually written very explicitly the different issues, the different things, like even quoting things like people going inside a room together and doing stuff together and something like that, and the guilt and the trauma and all these things. And then the question to me was like, do you think you should state these things in an academic writing? So I was like, why not? Like we had a cup of tea somewhere under the tree, like somewhere in the university, somewhere far away from there. And we were like, he was asking me like, do you think you want to do this? I said, hey, why not? This is the reality. This is the fact. Why should, because of an academic reason, the fact be somehow flushed under the carpet? Why shouldn't it not be told in the way it is told? Why shouldn't it not be quote unquote the way the actors present the reality? So my point was that. And I had a lot of disagreements with when he was saying you will face a lot of opposition on this. People will say like, what is this you are doing at the Department of Sociology? Why is the Department of Sociology promoting such type of writing? Okay, where people will suddenly condemn it and say like, this is not the language which you should be writing in, something that is so very academic. But nevertheless, I had tried my best, and later on he forced me to mellow things down, to put it in more a language which was more acceptable. But I still felt that no, it should have been like that, because realities are like that. It's like, for example, if you're doing a study on a language of something, and say in that language you come across like people very much regularly using bad words. Shouldn't we not write about it, quote unquote, the way it is told? But just because we say this is something ethically not right, when we are writing it in an academic field, you will put like something, even if it's something a bad word like fuck, you will just write it at F and ... and you want somebody to imagine what it is. So this was some of the dilemmas that I faced when I was writing this, and somehow we overcame that, because the point was when somebody comes from outside, there would be like the supervisors or the station DFC, like the way you have it, they will be cross-examining you during your Viva, and like in the first place they may just reject this dissertation and say like why it is written in this way. And that was something which was difficult and which continued, and it is still there in the same form the way it was at that point of time. So that was with the writing, but I think you would have definitely by now understood the whole logical reasoning, the pedagogy, the philosophy behind this whole thing, like how and where do I fit in as a man in this whole universe of the whole writers over here being women, but still I was there talking on behalf of the women whom I encountered, who were part of my life, and I cared about the same. So this is with it, and I feel like one of the greatest difficulties which I encountered was, although I was part of this, how to be free from values. Like I would use again Weber, like how to maintain the value neutrality, how to not make value judgments. So this was something like which was, like my constant struggle, because it was more of a reflexive style of writing things, using yourself as an important means of writing something, okay, but yet at the same time maintaining your objectivity in your writing and presenting things from the perspective of the actors. So coming to the last aspect of this book, and I feel there could be something for everyone who is here and who could benefit from this, especially youngsters who have not written earlier maybe. I think that this book, people who have written in this book, is somehow like an inspiration to the rest. For all of you young writers who think about that what is it that you could start with? The first is to look within rather than to look outside. Because within us there are so many things that you could try to discover and put it across to the world, which is again not only your own voice but the voice of so many people out there. So everyone could do this. And I think like it is something like a self-discovery, like that matters the most through our classrooms or through the classrooms, which can be discovered, and again it can be related to the field. That is what basically Alito is to mostly do. And you would see like indirectly by giving a part of yourself, a voice to it, a voice to the others, you are also vis-a-vis bringing about the social reality, the social world there is presented. So it takes you from something, what you say, like we usually get trapped in the consciousness of ourselves. Ourselves are sometimes trapped within us. And I would bring in and invoke Durkheim here. It's important that how this consciousness of oneself becomes conscience collective or collective conscience or conscience universalist. How do we bring this to the universal, way of looking at the different multiple perspectives of various realities which we are part of? And I think this is something like that where we could take some inspiration from this book, that although so many people have so many realities that are there, realities are never singular, but nevertheless combined together, they give you a broader understanding of the way you can construct the world, the social reality. So with this, I think I have spoken a lot about my experience and my journey into this and some of the challenges that I encountered, and I hope this would be of some help to all of us here who are present. And lastly, let me thank the organizers for organizing this and for having me on this platform to share about my journey. With due respect, a special thanks to Professor Ganesha, whom I had sometimes difficulty because when it came to like then evolving into a topic for the doctoral thesis, I had to depart from this journey that I begin with this particular topic and broaden it later, which helped me in my doctoral thesis as well, and he sharpened it later on, Professor Ganesha with here. So thank you to Professor Ganesha and Pavita at the Goa University for organizing this, as well as Kyoko ma'am, whom actually I happened to meet you sometimes on and off when you used to come to the university in 2004, I think you were there. So I used to see you sometimes, and I one day happened to ask Professor Ganesha, who is this person, and he said this is a research scholar who is doing her study on the language issue in Goa. And that's the only thing I remember of you, but I saw you many a times on and off. So thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for giving a listening ear to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. So maybe we have the other two authors now, and then open it for discussion. Yes, Professor Kyoko?
Yeah. Right. So,
yeah, so
we invite
yes.
Rajeshwari and Venisha, or
yes, we'll have yeah, so I think we'll have the first three authors, and then we can open it up for discussion.
Yeah. But first, yeah, maybe we will request each author of the first group to talk about their essay, or
yes.
So we will invite Rajeshwari and Venisha.
Yes, so first I think we'll invite Rajeshwari. She's currently working as a teacher in Pune and pursuing her B.Ed from Pune University. Over to you, Rajeshwari.
Thank you, Pavita, for that warm welcome. And I thank all the organizers of this event for giving me this platform to share my views. I'm Rajeshwari Mehta. Right now I'm in Pune. I'm married here. I am actually a resident of Vasco. I completed my MA Sociology from Goa University in the year 2011. As a part of the syllabus, it was compulsory for all the students to submit the dissertation for completion of the course. Each of us were given a guide, and I was given Sir Aliti. I must agree it was one of the cherishable moments of my life. I can still recollect the meeting our group had with Sir Aliti. It was great motivation. After the end of the meeting, we were all so good to do our writing the best, to put our viewpoint in the best possible way. English was never a dominant language. In my house, nobody spoke English. Hence, I was not so good at English. Okay, when I was writing, I was always doubting myself. Will I be able to finish this? Will I be able to even finish my MA? But one of the meetings with Sir Alito, I discovered, he said it is not necessary that you have to use English. You can use your mother language to express your view. But the fact was that I was not even good in Konkani in reality. But then I thought I had to work on my language, and I worked very hard. I took so many help of so many experiences, so many experienced trainers. At that time, I was even working in a small English speaking organization. So there I got many people. So they even helped me in my writing. Then somehow I was able to finish my dissertation. Okay, the topic of my writing is religion and identity in transaction. Okay, my work revolves mostly around the confusion I am facing. From the childhood onwards, I am being criticized, a lot of negative comments. I am the third generation of a migrant family who migrated from Karnataka, Honavar, one of the small little town in Karnataka, the fishing community. So when I went to schools, when I went to tuition classes, even with the local kids around my area, they used to always address saying that you are a non-Goan. They never expected me to be a Goan, or whenever I spoke in Konkani, then they thought my Konkani is not a Goan Konkani. I felt very disheartened, very disrespected, but I don't know how to reply. I didn't have any proper replies to them. So I was okay, like maybe that is true, maybe because my parents come from Karnataka, maybe I'm not in Goa. But later when I came to MA and I started writing, I realized I should be identified for what I am. I am born here, I am brought up here, I studied here, I have friends here, I have all my experience here. And I should be identified by the way I am, not from my parents' background or their birthplace. So I thought, how will I put this writing? When I expressed in one of my meetings to Sir Alito, he told, you should write a topic which connects to you. During this time, like a year before I joined MA, my parents, my mother especially, she introduced me to this group where the leader was more preaching about Christianity. And I actually didn't know what was I doing there, right? Nothing was I knowing. Just because she asked me to go, it's good for you, so I joined. And I always used to see people coming there praying, having lot of talk there. Then I thought, I told Sir, this is what I'm doing. And then he said, why don't you connect this thing in your writing? And that time I started doing a reading about it. Then I found there are so many people writing on this new religious group. This group was called as Sabha in Vasco. And what methodology I followed is survey method. I felt I have to go and talk to these people. Many of them I knew, personally I knew, and they were very open towards me. So they started talking to me why they are here. What I observed that they were here just because they wanted to share their problems. They want somebody to listen to them, and they will not be judged. I also found out many of them were migrants. There were some very local. They had so many confusions. One of their confusion was their identity, who were there here. Now I would like to say how I collected the information. after not only interview, I also looked into the observation. There were many meetings I used to not go to, but because of the hesitation, I went to many meetings. In those meetings, I found there were a lot of money involved, lot of donations from many parts of the country, many parts of the world was coming. This type of organization started blooming because of the problem people face. The problem people face due to the confusion of their identity. Because in their local communities, they are looked down upon. And I feel this has so much potential for the new researchers. So much work can be done upon this. My reading, my studies on this is, I felt very disheartened when people used to address me as non-Goan. Lot of anxious feelings were there in me. But later, while I was reading and writing and doing my studies during my dissertation, I somehow able to identify me as a modern lady, as an educated lady, who is born and brought up in Goa and who wants to get identified and get connected to motherland, not on their mother's or my parents' background. There is so much scope for the young mind in my studies that they themselves can express and identify their confusion. They can put forward their criticism they faced in their life. And I would like also to say that there are, when I was studying, I came across, it was not only me who was finding this as Goan, non-Goan problem. There were so many like me, but they're not coming up and talking. They're not putting, they're not even expressing. They were just okay with what was happening, but I got an opportunity to write about it. My book, my writing expresses my thoughts, my anxiety. There's so much scope for the new minds to come forward and express their confusion and to identify their place in this world. Thank you. I hope I have covered all the questions which I was forwarded by Savita. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rajeshwari. The next speaker is Venisha Fernandez. I think she's there.
Yes, Savita, I'm there.
Okay. Okay. Venisha Fernandez is assistant professor at the Department of Sociology, now at Rosary College. She's pursuing her PhD at the Department of Sociology at Goa University. Over to you, Venisha.
Thank you, Pavitra. It's the light reflection. I think this is better.
Yeah, I think you are having a little weak network, but for now it's okay. You can start. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Kyoto and the Department of Sociology at Goa University for giving me this platform to talk about my article in the book How Come. To begin with, this takes me 12 years back when it all started, and I had finished the first part in my MA, and we were preparing for the next MA part 2. And in MA part 2, we were supposed to do this dissertation. So all of us, we were looking for a topic. Now so what happened during the summer vacation was that I happened to visit Fuji. And I was into creative writing. I used to write poems, short stories. So when I visited Fuji for the first time, I felt such a strong connect to that place that I came home and wrote the piece that is there in the article. And when I showed it to Sir was like, why don't you take up this topic for a dissertation? And I was like, Sir, this is just what I felt. This is, I mean, how can I take it, and do a dissertation on it, do something academic? This is, so much creative writing. It falls in creative writing, so how? But Sir said, why not? And from there began, the journey. one thing that the dissertation did to me was that for the first time, I felt that my voice was important. Whatever I felt, whatever I wrote, is important. And somebody is there to hear it. So, it all began actually with my dad telling me the stories of Khuddi. Now, he was there till 10th standard in Khuddi, and then he went to Bombay to do his higher studies and then abroad eventually for work. But then when he used to come down during holidays, he would tell us, like, we did this in Khuddi, and he would tell us stories about Khuddi, like how was his life in Khuddi. And I think that, that created that bonding between Khuddi and me. And so many times I asked my father, like, why don't you take us to Khuddi? Because I heard that people were going to that place. But he never took until the summer of 2009. Now, and then I wrote that piece. And then, sir was also very much interested. So, we went there in the next, in the next summer we went there. I think 2009, 2010, I think we went there. Okay, and this brought me actually closer to the community. Now I have my relatives in Wade and Valkini who are, resettled there, and my dad, he built a house in Sange. So this dissertation also helped me to connect or to bond with the community of Khuddi. And it also, gave a base to that, gave an academic base to my writing. So when I said, so how can this writing be, academically, or how can we make it into academic writing? So we started searching for theories that could give us a base to what I was, writing, what I was feeling. So there is this sir student, Sumit Pandeparkar, and Professor Alexander Hand, who helped us to get literature which was there available in US in the universities. And then that's how I came to know that people have actually written on places in a very subjective way, and reading that gave me confidence that I can do this academically. So the two themes that I explored in this dissertation were place and memory. So what is the relationship that people have with the places? So today we tend to look at places from economic point of view, like as a plot of land. Okay, how much it can fetch me, or what I can inherit. But then places are also related to people. They are part of our identity and belonging. And how do people remember places? It is through memory. Now the government will look at the place in administrative, that is related or required from the administrative point of view, but people will relate to the land from a very, personal perspective, like what memory they have of that place, and that memory they will remember. So in my dissertation, I use the oral history method to collect the data, and the other one was reflexive autoethnography, wherein I reflected on my own, feelings and the connection, that I have with the land, and that actually helped me to see that people remember a particular thing in a different ways, and it is, and they also try to recreate those places or those memories in their current place. So I did learn a lot, and then it eventually, one thing I noted was that it eventually, kind of generated interest among other youngsters, So when I was interviewing people, it was only the old people who would nostalgically, remember about Khuddi or tell me about Khuddi. Okay, and But as you know, the years went by or passed on, or when I was interviewing that, I could see that interest being generated in the younger generation as well. So yes, one thing that I wanted when I first visited Putti was to document Putti for posterity, because I felt that land had some magic to it, because everybody remembered it so fondly. So I wanted to document it, and that was one reason of reason for documenting Putti. And I'm so happy that it is now documented in a documentary, and also in this article in this book, House On. So what I would like to tell the young researchers is that believe in yourself and believe that whatever you do, or that what you have to offer, it does count, it does make a difference. And research is such a powerful tool that will make your voice heard. So this kind of approach that Alito gave us, it gives rise to alternate history. It gives power to different voices that are there. And if you look at history, history is always told to us from the top perspective. But such kind of work gives power to voices that otherwise goes unheard. And if you look from these voices, or if you hear these voices, they are actually very fascinating. They actually present a very, diverse and a very, I don't know if I should use this word, but a very colorful, and also not so colorful, part of the past. That's it. Thank you very much for giving me this platform. I shall answer your queries in the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Sachin, Rajeshwari, and Venisha for your, presentations. I know Rajeshwari because she was my senior, and I was there when she was presenting her work. And I think we would have very few conversations, where she would tell us about, her difficulty with language, which she shared. And so I know Rajeshwari because she was my senior. I've in fact visited Kurdi a lot of times, but I came to know of the reality of the place after I heard Venisha's presentation when I was in my second year MA, when she had presented, or first year MA. So that's when I actually learned about the place that we would go for, as a fun or some picnic. It has so many memories for people. And Sachin's work, in fact, my mother was also working abroad. So I remember when I was in MA, looking at your work, reading your work, I had conducted a study in my own ward, but on the males who were left behind when the women migrated abroad, especially to the Gulf. Not that we don't have male migration, but in my family it was more female migration. So your work gave me a direction towards looking at, the experience of my father and, the other males in my own ward. So in that way, I could myself, relate to all the works, and, had a kind of a connection to it. So before I ask question, Professor Kyoko, would you like to start or have any specific question?
Yeah. Well, Sachin, Venisha, Rajeshwari, thank you for sharing the experiences with us. And yes, it's really impressive, all the stories. And I just, would like to know, as Sachin told in his, talk, there have been some dilemmas, in yourself. Like, what kind of writing is academic? And, I would like to ask Rajeshwari and Venisha, about your dilemmas of including, Venetia said colorful voices, diversity of voices were there, and it's sometimes difficult to include all the voices in that, form of writing. And I feel sometimes that maybe it's better to present the things in the form of video or, audio. So, what is your idea about the writing, academic writing? And maybe whatever you felt in the process of your writing of dissertation, please share with us. Maybe Rajeshwari or Venetia? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Can I?
Yes, please.
Yes. One thing about writing, creative writing or academic writing, and what I felt during that time was that, I was interviewing people, and like, how to put it, I brought that spoon from Surdi, and I mean, if you look at it, it looks so, so mundane, so everyday. And when you think of academic writing or research, during that time it was like, oh my God. And I always felt that I was not capable of writing academically. So the thing is that, what I want to say is that, so how will that become, academic writing? So I was in a dilemma, and which of course Sir helped me, is that just to put it the way it is, okay? And that's why, giving that, those theories actually sort of, kind of breached that gap or filled that gap in a way. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, for academic writing, you need to include, some theories and
some statistics,
literature, and that kind of, shared ideas or norms are there. But Aristotle says that you just write whatever you want.
You just write, yes.
Yeah, that is, quite, Aristotle's way, breaking the norms or stereotypes. And,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, of course, that academic writing itself is a production of a history and, let's say, hierarchy of, European ideas, or, going back to that Latin kind of, ruling institution, I think. So how about you, Rajeshwari? I think, another thing is English dominance in academic writing.
In my case, what happened is I started reading social religious or new religious groups. So I read, and what I did was I started writing and started doing the review, and directly went and started speaking to people, and then and there when the people were talking to me, I started writing. I kept writing, and that is what I started typing also. And then everything I submitted to Sir Alito. And it became it became around 110 pages. I didn't know what to edit, what to remove, how to precise, nothing did I know. I just started putting things as they were telling me. But in course of time, talking to Sir, and then it was brought down, and systematically things were done. And then it came to 25 pages to 110 pages.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even with me, English is not my native language, and that grammar of English is totally different from Japanese. Like in English, subject, verb, and object, and in Japanese, verbs always come at the end. So that means that I said that the Japanese don't, say important things first. But it means that we put the verb in the end. So it was very difficult for me in the beginning, I went to London before I went to Goa. There it was, a tough thing for me. All the, kept saying that it's
Yes, please, sorry, yes.
So I'm Anjali Narona, and I'm a 4th generation migrant outside of Goa and settled in Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal. So I have not had much touch with Goa, but I have been working on language and identity. So first of all, my main comment is that we do similar things at school level. We had with a fraternal group a very good seminar webinar conference called Where is My Story? But that is at the school level right up till high school level. So I am very happy to see two things, that this connect with personal experience and particularly marginalized experiences coming into academia in such a big way. All the students of Professor Alito getting to do this and then pursuing their PhDs, and almost all of you are now teaching. So one sees that this has, it's not a one-off kind of thing. So this pedagogy then carries on. So it is very, very heartening, and I would like to connect with some of you on work that we do. I now at 62 am learning Konkani because 4th generation, my great-grandparents migrated out, and my grandparents did not speak to my parents in Konkani or Portuguese. So that whole loss is there. And at the 3rd level, I am connecting in terms of what is my identity. Till now, till 60 years, I considered myself a Bhopali because I've spent 50 years and I'm happy with it. But I found inside a lot of alienation with the communities here, and with the, it's not to do with religious communities, but just the culture. And now when I'm reconnecting to Goa, and many of the things that are happening and ways of thinking that one is seeing, I find that connect with me personally. That, perhaps somewhere in spite of 4th generation migration, I retain in some ways some of those things, apart from the superficial things of food and music and dance and so on. But ways of thinking, that retention is there. I'm only, it's been unfortunate that I didn't come across this whole experience before we lost Professor Alito. It would have been so wonderful to meet him, because I've been working on tribal languages here a lot, and the same things that Rajeshwari mentioned happened with our tribal and Bundeli and Bagheli children, how they are pushed out. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'll be listening to all of you, and I have the book Hao Kon, and I will read. I've read 1 or 2 articles. Now it motivates me to read all of them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Anjali. And it was, great to know that you've got Hong Kong book, and I'm really happy that you shared your experiences.
Dr. Shami Rao has raised hand. Dr. Shami?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am not a sociologist, but I work in a very grey area called hypnotherapy, where so I want to just share an experience, and if it helps any of you, please use it. I've had two two cases where one is a migrant Sindhi community. And this boy has been here he's the fourth generation, like Anjali said, but he is still dealing with that issue of where do I come from, why am I here? And every time when we come back to the ruling problem in his life, it just comes back to that unheard story from why have we come from why have I left my original source? Now, have any of you during your research come across a question or an answer to this question? Why migration? I mean, this is a fourth generation child asking, not the parents. And more than that, his question was, why are they denying their authentic identity? Why are my parents refusing to be Sindhi? And why are they not completely Konkani? This was the question, and I don't have an answer for this. Do any of you have an answer for this? It would help me a lot.
During my study, I also faced same question, and this is not only me. Whoever I have interviewed, those who are third or fourth generation, I usually introduce third generation. They also were having this in their mind. They never been acknowledged, never been respected as a localite. They were always called, you are a migrant, you are outsider, to answer, to non-goer. They're always been said. It is very disheartening. You are born and brought up here. You know the only culture where you are born and brought up. But still, they have not been addressed as this is there, you are a good one. They are always been addressed with the parents' background. I guess we should not give that as a thought, and we should look forward. We should not address ourselves from where our parents come from. We should be identified with what we are with, where I am working, what I have achieved, rather than what others are looking us at, what they are defining us at. It takes time. I think it is not easy. It is a very difficult thing. It takes time, but the course of our experiences makes us strong.
Yeah, thank you so much, Atish.
Yeah, I think from what I've heard from Venisha and Rajeshwari, both have spoken or both have shared about for their roots, about their roots, wherein Venisha takes back, goes back to the roots of from where her parents have come from, whereas Rajesh draw her roots from where she is born. So I find these two very interesting perspectives from where and how we draw our own identity and also our belonging, and what also maybe it is, to answer Dr. Shami's question, or my view on that after listening to Venisha and Rajeshwari is that we draw our Sachin is back.
Yeah.
So we draw it, I think, mainly from where we get, with our own experience. If that experience, drawing us, let's say if I draw my roots from my memories, then I may not want to, go that kind of experience. So this is what I could, draw to.
And
Yes.
what I feel that sometimes, like my parents, they did not keep any good attachment to the villages, to Honnagar, nor they made us feel connected to that. If parents also keep their kids connected to their roots, will have a very positive impact. We didn't go, once a year only we went to visit, and we rarely spoke to the people there. So I don't.
Pavita has introduced me
to you, I belong to the Gauda community in Goa, which is a tribal community, and my journey began of researching my community when I was in ME. So we had to choose a topic for dissertation, and I was very confused as to which topic I should choose for researching. So discussing with Alito, and there was a final date which was given to us, like what are the topics which you want to research on. So I was very much blank about the topic. I did not have any topic on my mind, and that's when Sir Alito told me that there is the Archives and the Research Center for Ethnomusicology, American Institute of Indian Studies, New Delhi, and they are looking out for hiring positions for field research assistants for working on the tribal communities in Goa. So Sir Alito was the one, like, why you can't just go for the interview and see if that could interest you. So I went for the interview and I got the post on part-time basis. And then when I came back to the class, so he asked me, why can't you work from like when you are working on the tribal communities, and since you belong to the tribal community, why don't you think of working on your own community? So that's when I began thinking, because first I never ever thought of, like, you know, I could do a study on my community. So that's when I began studying my own community. So when I went, that was my work project also as a field researcher, research assistant. When I went to one of the places in Goa, Kepe, where the Gauda people are located, to collect the information about their rituals, about the songs, which the project demanded from me, I saw that there were many rituals and songs which the people were singing in that place. But when I came back to my village, which is the Ambeli village in Salsett, Goa, I saw whatever rituals and whatever songs people were singing before in my childhood were not performed now, or they are no more in my village. So I was very confused as to one place where there are Gaudas, where they have retained their traditional practices, and where I see in my village where people have completely forgotten about their past. So that's what made me to think or bring out the question, research question for my study. What do people remember about their past? So that's how I began researching about my community, and that's the topic for my research was, where have all the songs and rituals gone? A case study of Gaudas in Ambeli village. So my work demanded the data and the songs to be collected from the Gauda community. So when I went to collect these songs and the rituals in my village, I found that people said that we do not remember any songs or any rituals. So I was very curious, why in Kepe people remember and why not my village? People said that they do not remember their past. So in my search of data, I collected information from my village, basically from the Gauda community, about the myths of origin through oral histories of Ambeli village. I collected information about the different life cycle rituals which were happening before, but which are not happening now, like ritual of birth, rituals during marriage, and rituals during death. I also collected information about the Mand, which is a sacred space for the Gaudas, where the Gaudas used to perform their rituals, used to sing, used to pray, and used to dance on the Mand, which was a very important space for them. While researching about my community, I captured various reactions of the Gauda people, both the young as well as old, about their identity, and some of the reactions about their past, what do they remember about their past were how Gaudi knew Gaudi to me. I'm not a Gaudi, you are Gaudis. When I went to interview or discuss about the rituals in the community to the headman, that is the Budhuwant of the community, he said, Sandela Kantaram Kotta, to old people sing songs. So people rejected their past. They had painful memories about their identity, which forced them to forget their past. Just excuse me. Yeah. So I collected information through informal discussion, case studies, interviews, recording of the songs. So basically my study was an ethnographic study of my community. So this journey of researching one's own community has been very exciting for me as well as very painful. It has been exciting for me because it was exciting for me to know more about the various rituals and the songs of the community which are not performed now. But at the same time, it was very painful for me because while researching, I also reflected on so many painful memories about my past, which I had never told to anybody. So this research of where have all the songs gone also made me to re-research myself. I also have these painful memories, the insults when I went to school, because the teachers were also from my place and they were belonging to the different caste and I was from the lower caste. So a tribal community. So wherein I felt that in school also teachers knowing my identity, they discriminated me. So when I went, I will just narrate one incident which I have not narrated maybe in the book. When I went to sing on stage in my village and I forgot the song because it was in my childhood, it was in 4th standard. When I went on stage and I began forgetting the song, the next day I came to the school in the classroom where my teacher said why there was a need for you to go on the stage and sing when you were forgetting. So I remember that painful memory. From that time I became fearing. That stage fear was there in me, and that time I stopped singing, I stopped acting. I felt that the reflecting on myself when I came from 4th standard to 5th standard, 6th and 7th, I began I felt like not going on stage. I felt like not dancing. I did not feel like to dance and sing. So that was a painful memory which was in my mind. But now I have, by the time I went to 10th, I met one of the teachers who encouraged me to sing. But overall, that impact was still there on my life, where the teacher insulted me and shouted at me in the class. So through this research, I researched myself and I could share whatever I could not share with everyone. I could express myself after doing this research. I could write poems of discrimination and I could come out, I could empower myself out of this discrimination through writing of through poems. So it was because of the research which I did in MA which helped me, and a teacher, a mentor, Professor Alito, who helped me to express myself. He was the one. He told me why don't you write? Why don't you keep a book and write poems? So I wrote my experiences on a notebook, and even to come out of this, to express myself, I took almost 1 year after writing my expressions, after writing my poem to show it I took almost 1 year to go it through because it was so painful for me, like, to come out of this kind of insults, discrimination. I took a lot of time to reflect on myself. So this kind of exercise or research has helped me to empower me from being a member of the marginal community. I could bring out my voice to the mainstream society, which was mainly absent before this. So this kind of narrative, especially I'm referring to my narrative, which is written in simple language, which of course I'm sure if it becomes a part of academic discourse, it will help many people like me to give a voice to their silence and will help them to express themselves. So thank you, Professor Kyoko, Professor Favita, and Professor Ganesha Somyaji for giving us this platform. Through this platform, I could express myself, express my views, and tell my story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nazina. We'll quickly go ahead with our next speaker. I think Elizabeth has joined.
I'm not sure whether they are still continuing because he was supposed to attend. Now he must have done the classes. Wait, let me just check. Give me 1 minute.
Okay. So Elizabeth Bara is currently pursuing her PhD from Goa University. She has been teaching in MES College, Vasco in 2018. She was at the Goa University Department of Sociology from 2015 to 2018. She has also worked as research assistant for University of York and UCLA. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much.
Can you just put the video on, or you will prefer?
There is some internet issues. I'm scared that the internet will just go off. Actually, I checked in the morning, and then when I was joining in at 10:30, the internet wouldn't work. And then we solved the issue and all, and now I could get in. So I'm very, very sorry for this. So I'll just start without any delay. Is it okay if I keep my this off?
Yeah, that's fine. Otherwise, you may be forced to, get out of the meeting due to, connection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So please go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, I'm very glad to be a part of this program, and I want to thank the department, Sociology Department and Poland University for making this event happen. Thank you so much, and allowing me to be a part of this. So I'll just speak a little bit about my paper. And actually, I never thought before 2011 when I signed up for my master's. I never thought that I could write at all. In fact, I didn't believe at all that I had a story to tell. And until I met Professor Alito in 2011, I guess my journey starts there. I remember he told me to write a simple self-reflection for a class. I think it was tourism class or something. And I still remember after he went through my self-reflection, he called me into his office and told me, you should write, but only if you are interested. He would always give us a choice, never force or anything. So you should write. So after some thought, I signed up to write a dissertation under his guidance, and today I think here I am. So today I'll talk about my paper. So this article, Why Dance, is an adaptation from my MA thesis, and in that format it had another title. The title was Dancing and the Other, Folklorizing Tribal Authenticity. And I want to mention this because we were talking about my journey and all. This was my original title, and the change happened for no particular reason. I liked both the titles.
Fernandez's and what? And what's the name?
The second reason was because the title is so well crafted that it captures the whole idea of the paper. Dancing and the other, popularizing tribal authenticity. So I'll just take the first part of the title, that is dancing and the other. So my paper revolves around the discussion on the revival and resurrection of dance. So I basically look into what happens to dance itself.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Stage, what impact it has on the community and people. And in my case, I'm talking about the people from the Gauda community whose dances have been staged. What does
See, my thinking is this,
which is, discussions of identity, shame, gaze, authenticity, othering, etc. So, there are paradoxes in my paper in the sense of complexity. Like, I talk about the other. So on one hand, I am the other because I am a performer, not from the community. I am performing the dances of the Gauda community. And the Gaudas themselves feel as the other.
I'll send you the link.
And on the other hand, I too belong to a tribal community, so I kind of know how they feel.
I will actually don't wait.
So sometimes here I am the other, sometimes they are the other.
Got it,
and as dancing and the other, the topic I'm saying rises in its complexity. It will show how these paradoxes arises, and I further take it with a feeling of shame of having a tribal status myself. Then the second part of this title is folklorizing tribal authenticity. Folklorizing means staging, and staging it basically out of its context. Also here I am more concerned about its context in which the dances are performed. And for me specifically, the context is living, breathing experience, something that is actually happening. Now, I would like to mention that the subject of my study is I have specifically taken the dances of the Gauda community, and these Gauda dances are an integral part of the Goan folk traditions. So these performances are staged by different groups. Like for example, there are these. I have grouped it. There's the tourism sector, under which comes the Kala Academy, comes Lok Utsav, then the Goan boat cruises, as today I know, as it is known today, and where also I came in because I was a performer on the royal cruises. So this particular group takes these dances and stages them as under the common name as Goan folk traditions. Then there are these private dance groups also performing for private events in hotels, parties. They also are showcasing the Goan tradition to the tourists outside. Then there are people from the tribal communities who are in the villages, in their own villages for these local festivals or Lok Utsav even. They perform it in their own village settings, and like how Mozina ma'am also said, they perform in their Mand. Okay. Then the fourth group that uses these dances is you'll always find students performing for various school level, college level competitions as well. So this is how I show that the Gauda dances are very integral part of the Goan folk tradition, form of part of the Goan folk tradition. Now, the article basically argues what this staging, how the staging leads to what? Does it staging of these dances lead to authenticity or inauthenticity? I mean the dances. Is it a good thing, bad thing, or it is neither? When I talk about this, I mean whether they are transforming the tradition or the culture. Is it becoming spurious? Is it becoming commoditized? Is it becoming commercialized? So there are many parts, where I have made reconnections from the beginning and the end. Basically, I cannot retell the paper. It has to be read because some parts in the beginning are connecting to the end, and the end is connecting to the start. My research article is an autoethnographic study where at every point I reconnect to myself. My story comes from me, but also belongs to somebody else. So the personal is always, particular. I believe that we do have shared experience. We just need to recognize them. And we might belong to other nationalities, religion, caste, race, or tribe, but I believe that we all have stories to tell. And I think if you look close enough, you might also find the links. So thank you very much. That's it from me.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. We can share stories and we can understand each other. Yeah, that is, I believe that Alito's idea.
Yeah. So we move on to the last speaker for the day, Dr. Priyanka Vilip. She is an assistant professor in sociology at Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce in Kepe. She has pursued PhD from the Department of Women's Studies. Her topic PhD thesis was on shifting cultivation in Goa, livelihood and rights of women of the Velit tribe. Over to you, Priyanka.
Thank you, Favita. I have network issues, so I'll switch off video. So, good day everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Department of Sociology, Goa University and Konan University, Japan for giving the stage for authors of AUCO to share their experiences. Myself, Dr. Priyanka Vilip, I teach sociology at Government College, Kepe. I'm glad that I was associated with Sir Alito. Out of 10 contributors of AUCO, I have spent more time with Sir, which was my good fortune, I believe. My journey with Sir started somewhere in 2009, although I took admission in the department in the year 2008. During our second year of PG, we had dissertation which was compulsory during that time. So students were told to select guide. And fortunately, I got chance to work under Sir Alito's guidance. So at the beginning, we had several meetings discussing several topics. But one thing I was sure about that I wanted to focus on the Velit community, my community, one of the tribal communities of Goa. So I, as usual, I thought of focusing on the Velit community and the government schemes. So I started referring secondary sources, and while reading secondary sources, I found that in all those secondary sources, especially authors, talked about Velit community in a negative way. So, they authored especially the Velib community. So what I did, so I shifted my topic from studying developmental schemes to this topic that was looking at secondary sources from from tribal perspective. So the title of my dissertation was myself, Priyanka Velib, confused of how come we are othering and writing back a Velib writes back. So my study was on secondary sources of the Velib community. I started referring books, and at the end, I used to get every day I used to get like confused because I had one viewpoint, but authors are saying something else. So I have questioned all those in my book. So instead of talking much about the whole process, what I'll say is it was in the that was the beginning of my academics. To be honest, before working on the topic of dissertation, I had fear to write just because of non-standardization, just because of my non-standardization of language. I was not good in neither in English nor in local languages like Konkani or Marathi. But sir convinced me to write in whichever language I wanted to. Although medium of instruction was English. So also advised me to take help from someone for grammatical improvements, and I agreed to. So the usual process started, selecting and reading articles, relating theories to the topic, etc. And then at the end, after working on the topic, I emailed my first draft of dissertation to sir. Obviously, I was very nervous. Because that was my first piece of writing and research. The very next day, I got a reply from sir, which I want to read before you all. Because memories and advice is always as fresh as his presence in my life. The email that I'm going to read is dated back on 13th November 2009. Let me begin. Dear Priyanka, your writing, the work you have done, and the literature you have understood and integrated is amazing indeed. I want to thank you for giving meaning to my work and life. It matters. I also like the title. Myself, Priyanka Velib, confused of how who am I? Maybe a subtitle like A Woman Writes Back. I think your writing is powerful, and I'm reminded of Maheshwari Shweta, the great Bengali writer who you may like to read. See attachment to get some idea of the lady in her writing. She is a great champion of the Adivasis. I too thought about the language question and following the African American English example. I think yours is a good decision, and I have retained your argument and brought it in chapter 1. I think you can see if you like and make any changes that you may want. I'm also sending you the issue of post-colonial language in the attachment. I do not want to make many corrections to your language. I think you will understand why. Let it roll, Priyanka. Just wrap it out and let us go for publication next. Thanks for giving me the joy of working with you. I owe you a party, and we shall soon have one. Late. So this was Sir's way of understanding and creating space for marginalized student like me. I remember many times I could not communicate due to my language barrier, but Sir conveyed my thoughts to others. Sir Alitu had different level of understanding and consideration which encouraged many of his students. He lived our experiences. He lived our discrimination. He acknowledged our identity. Sir stressed on the question of shame and the hidden injuries of stigma. So he welcomed the identity of his student in the classroom by taking into consideration and understanding marginalized identities and implementing teaching strategies to support them in the classroom. As I conclude, I must say, Angkor is not just a book, but it is a movement. It was a journey which made which made an entry for many in the academics, especially in terms of implementation of reservation policy at Goa University or in other colleges of Goa. The journey in the academic sector might have never happened without Sir's guidance or without Sir's encouragement. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. That was indeed a very, very heart-touching, your relation with the work. You spoke about your work and your journey in this whole Hongkong. At the same time, in a very personal way, you've shown how Sir would have his own ways of, making us, work without telling us how to do it. That is something that everybody would agree. He will never tell you, do this. He would say like, how about, you look at this also, and he had his own ways. So if you permit me, I'm so tempted, I'll start with Priyanka, first, the questions. First of all, the second panel with the three authors who have, spoken about their work, I find a kind of a very close connection in all these three writings, because all the three writings are about the tribal communities, but everybody has their different perspective, their different view and experience that they've shared. All three come from their personal experiences. Of course, all the others also come, wherein Muzina looks at, how or why is it that her community, the Christian or Catholic Gauda community, do not want to carry on with the culture. Priyanka looks at how her community is being portrayed within the academics by the different academicians who are there, all the writings. Elizabeth deals with a very interesting personal experience wherein she herself comes from a tribal community but is performing the dances of some other tribal community. So she's looking at the othering of the tribal communities in Goa and her experience. So these are very three I felt had a very kind of a connect with one another, and the kind of questions they were asking were very different. So I would I think take this question that is there in the chat box and also add my question to that is how do we foresee this book being used academically, wherein when Priyanka in her writing says that she felt that the way in which the academicians wrote about her community, she could not connect with it. And that perhaps is mainly because most of the writings about Goa, the communities in Goa, comes from a dominant caste, class, or a linguistic, perspective or a background. So how do we now see this book as a part of, academia that could be included in the classroom, or how would this book be, a kind of a challenge? How do you as authors, and especially since now Priyanka, you have a kind of you have in a way challenged this dominant narrative about your community. So how do you see this book can be used academically or for readings about Goa and about the community, about the personal experiences?
Yeah, maybe Dr. Mozinia and Elizabeth,
yes.
You can answer, Favita's question.
Yes, Favita, can I answer?
Yes.
Okay, see, Favita, we have, our fathers, we have seen so many writings. Even when I was exploring the literature, I have never come across people writing from my own community. I have seen others writing about ourselves, on the tribal community. So if you look at our work, it is from the perspective of the marginal community, which you will see, except for few works on this community, some people might have done as an insider. So this is from the insider's point of view and from the point of view of tribal people researching on their own community and bringing out literature or realities of life from their perspective. So I think it will also challenge the other narratives or other literature which is there in the field, and this book can also be helpful for those who cannot come up with their voice. So by looking or by reading at this book, students can understand about our experiences, and also they can write about their own experiences. So I think this book can be empowering, and also from the point of view of writing in simple language, not like, so-called we have certain things like, if you write in certain words, that is only academic. But if you write in simple words, that is not academic. But if you look at the book, how gone, it is written in simple language, how we express ourselves or we represent our community. So I think that should help if the book is brought out and discussed or read by people or young scholars. Thank you. I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Pavi, your mic is...
Now you get you. Yes. Yeah, so Priyanka and Elizabeth, would you like to share something? Also, maybe a little bit of my additional question. So as now, like these pieces were written when you were a student. Now you are in a position of, being a professor at the colleges, universities. So how do you see this book as part of academia, like, or have you ever had a discussion around this book within the classroom, or did you have any opportunity wherein you could introduce the works from the book, maybe your own or somebody else's, in the classroom, whether you could have a discussion with the students, or any kind of reaction that you got to from the students?
Yeah, Favita, I would like to answer.
Yes.
So, so this book is already in the academic domain, at least, I believe. So as now it is our responsibility. We have to encourage our students to share their experiences, and we need to also give them platform the way we got because of Sir Alito. So we have to take a lead. So that's what.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. No, I was asking whether like if you've got an opportunity to introduce it, and whether you'll have any discussions at the college level or at the university, especially given the way in which, like, from all the presentations that we've heard, it's more to deal with what happens within the classroom that in a way has made
at least that it is already in academic domain.
Yeah, hello Pavitra.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I have initiated. I have introduced the book in the sense when our website was launched, How Gone, I made my students read an article, so they could pick up any one article and read it and then summarize it. But discussion as such we have not had. But yes, it is because of Sir Alito that I also got I use his way of teaching, like how he surroundings look into our lives. So students are also given assignments, which help them to look into their lives or their surroundings. And this year we have gone ahead at our college and we are having a paper presentation for students. So yes, I think we are going in that direction, and I'm like, looking forward to have a discussion like how you are having at this platform, perhaps for our own students. Yes.
Thank you, Danisha. I'm happy to hear that you have already initiated, that kind of things. And I would like to say one thing. Alito encouraged all of you to express not only in academic writing, but also in the forms of poems, or in the case of Elizabeth, the performing is, dancing is your own way of expressing yourself. So we need to give students as various as possible, means various kinds of expressing method, and that is a bit difficult to do in our academic curriculum. What do you think? Of course, these days that all ethnography, that movement is having a momentum, and I think in Europe, in the UK, or in the US, many teachers, professors are trying to incorporate, that performing is a part of a class. And I think, Fabita, you have done some research on, literatures about all the ethnography, and others too. So that
yes.
in incorporating various kinds of pedagogies. That is our challenge. And even in Japan at Kona University, I have a course of editing a video, means the data storytelling, and that is little bit way to allow students to express themselves. And those videos they produced, they can't tell me so much about themselves. And in the usual classes, as those speakers told, it's quite difficult to speak out themselves. Means there's a certain kind of academic way, that dominance you can feel. And of course that English dominance is there, and we feel that we are worried that we could make mistakes. Yeah. So we need to introduce quite different ways of pedagogies, which Alito initiated. That is my idea. And we, got this issue in common, even though we belong to different countries, India and Japan. It's about the issues in higher education. And Fabita, it's your field, your topic you're now trying to explore.
Yes, and in fact my questions are more driven from my own interest that is there, because I think there is the most important thing I feel is encouraging readership among the students and even the faculties. I feel with regards to, there are different works like autoethnography, studying your own community, or work that is derived from your own personal experience, is still struggling, to find a place within academia. It is not very well encouraged yet. It is still in its struggling stage. So, which is why I feel, we need to encourage the readership, especially when the writings come from the community. And now that we are in a position, now we are in the classroom, at least we have a kind of an, we can say a space, and we have that, I will not say we are in the position of authority, but but I think we at least have an opportunity wherein we can introduce these kinds of works and readings to our students, and then I think have discussions and encourage around discussions around these kinds of writings, which then may be used to address the kind of question that Priyanka asked in her work, like the way the others portray my community is very different than what I experience. So how will the others know what is the community? Is you write, so encouraging that kind of writing. And I think first it would start with reading and readership about Goa, which is there. Yes, I think Elizabeth has raised her hand.
Yeah. So Shinchala talking about, and even Kyoko talked about pedagogy and how we would bring this forward and how it will be good for the students, and how we can, practice this further. So, yeah, something what you said also is reading, writing is so very important. So Professor Alito had a very different way of working. I remember in his classes, he would just, allow the students to speak. The classes were mostly student-centric, you can say, where, the student speaks and the teacher listens. Usually that is not the case in a normal classroom. We have all grown up, and right from KG to, post-graduation, it has been like that. So what I learned in his classes was listening was so important, and what I learned from it was the observation, and listening, observing without judgment, without any setting your preconceived ideas about any person, event or idea. Okay, so this helped me greatly in my research also, that very careful observation, very careful listening to what people have to say, because issues like caste, tribe, they're very, very sensitive to me also, to others also who I'm talking to. So I would just like to say that the students who may want to do an autoethnography, or they want to pursue any studies or any research, need to be doing an unbiased research is a great challenge, and if it is not this way, then maybe our findings can be adulterated, because many times you try to you're still observing a particular thing or a person, but you already have preconceived notions about that community, that particular thing. So that is no one to blame actually. That is how we are culturally inscripted, you could say, like how Merleau-Ponty also uses this body inscriptions and all. He said cultural inscriptions. We are already, grown up in that way. We are taught in that way. We are taught to think. So how to, unwind and how to unthink everything, deconstruct everything, and start again, start building the blocks again. So one thing as educators, teachers, we also need, it's a challenge for us also, who are doing research, who are teaching. We need to, because it's not easy to just say and change the mind of somebody, or tell them stop thinking like this, or it is not like that. And for students, writing is most important, because revealing comes, for me it came through writing. It's very difficult to tell. That's why revealing is healing, I feel. Thank you. Pavita?
Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing that. So maybe we, it's already 12:45, so we'll keep maybe 10 minutes more for if any of the audiences would like to ask something. Professor Kyoko, would you like to ask something? Any audience?
Actually, you know, Ms. Anjali pointed out about translation. You know, Hong Kong has been published in English as well as in Marathi, but not in Hindi yet. Yeah, of course, we need to think about it, but there are some issues with, you know, publishing. That
we also need to look at translating it in Konkani.
Yeah, true. That should come first. So maybe, you know, not only in the form of, you know, book, in the form of, you know, video or whatever, you know, we need to explore. We should try. That is, you know, another issue about Indian society or Goan society. You know, multilingual society, you know, needs many translations. You know, in Japan it's easier. We can have, of course, there are some, you know, Portuguese-speaking people in Japan too, migrating from Brazil. So Japan is not really a monolingual country, but still, we need to think about it. Translation into other languages. Yeah, and yes, you know, I think, you know, it's a good sign that, you know, you all with various backgrounds, you know, tribal background, and like Sachin, he did research on, you know, women, and he knows about the problem with women and problem of women. So yeah, I wanted to say that it's a good sign that you all started to teach at colleges, and you can tell your students who have been silenced so far how, you know, how to speak out and how to express. So I think you all should continue and carry on Alito's, you know, legacy, and you need to try to teach students in Alito's way. That's my, you know, advice to you. Even I was encouraged by Alito's pedagogy, and I tried to, you know, teach like how he did in Japan. And it's, you know, more difficult in India. You know, that, you know, not only tribal issues, caste issues, and that divide between men and women, and yeah, lots of issues to be solved, and religious issues too.
I think also the way in which Professor Alito dealt with this question, or at least helped us in dealing with this question of being an insider while you conduct your research, you know, and dealing with all the other questions of subjectivity and you know, your personal emotions, and giving importance to your subjectivity, emotions, without being what you say, having this value judgment and then writing. So I think he had his own very unique way in dealing with, these kinds of not only teaching but also research methods and the way he guided. So I would like to ask if any of the audiences have any questions to ask. Or any
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this therapeutic, what came out in all these three presentations most strongly was the therapeutic effect of regaining your own voices, the voices of the students that Professor Alito had. And it reminded me that this conference I referred to, Where is My Story? In that there was interestingly a 50-50% composition of marginalized communities themselves, Pardhis and Gonds and Muslims and so on, and privileged people like us. And the marginalized communities, the people coming, empowered people from different castes, they said, where is your story? Why are you writing about us? Which is what Priyanka said, that others research tribal issues and Dalit issues. And it's an economic issue also, because they gain the professorships to be teaching caste and tribe and so on in universities. So they said, since we lack the language and writing abilities, why don't you, who have the privilege and the flow of it, mentor us and teach us so that we can tell our stories? And where are your stories, your struggles, your oppression that you are doing? So as teachers, in many of you are teachers, if you can bring this, as Professor Kyoko also said, the expression part of it in your classrooms of both marginalized and the elite, that they tell their stories in different ways and they interact with each other, that would be a very important thing. So, because we must look at ourselves also. Why is it only the tribes and the marginalized who should do internal reflection? And secondly is, how can part of the reading list in sociology and this thing in any of the universities or colleges, would you like to make it, or it creates more controversy, so it's better to do it through personal suggestions that you have a look? And thirdly, there is a sort of second layer of academic this thing in civil society, of NGOs in movements and study groups and so on. And I think for that, which is why I suggested if we can have multilingual translations, if I can explore, if I can be in touch with whoever, because we do publishing here in Bhopal in Hindi. So, and we have translators who may be interested. So, if the terms and conditions, if you can let me know who you can, I'll just put my email down here. If you can let me know who to connect to, then I can explore the Hindi part of it. And also some other minor languages in Orao and Munda. Elizabeth said she's from that background. And if Velips and Kunbis have they retained any language of their own, or is it only Konkani or a version of Konkani? In that also it needs to be translated, and it can be a video translation or a PDF translation also. It need not be published either. Thank you. Very, very, very illuminating and very enriching discussion. I'm very thankful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anjali.
Thank you.
It reminded me of, that was said by, Alito. I think it was in the year of 2007.
I'm just saying hi to show you my my face. I thought that. Yeah.
It told me of, Center for Data Storytelling, located in the USA. And the head of the solution said, everybody has got their own story, and everybody's story should be valued. I think, Alito somehow the idea of, storytelling, and, after that, I tried more that direction. Let students speak out and express more. So I think, I will share with you maybe, the URL of that Center for Storytelling, and it can give you an idea. And is trying to tell the voices of silenced women, let's say in Afghanistan or in other countries. The center is trying to inform, how to allow, those suppressed voices to be out. I just, try to get the URL and share it with you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Has anybody else has anything, or we can then conclude? Okay. So shall we conclude, Professor Kyoko?
Yeah, I just shared the URL of Center for Data Storytelling, and you can get some ideas about DST from their website. Okay, so shall we conclude?
Yes, I think we don't have any more questions even in the chat box.
No, only if Professor Alito's any collections are there, if a reference can be given, or if y'all have any, like Priyanka read out, collection of, if you can collect his responses or any articles that he wrote, that would be very interesting. And also, if you as teachers, if you write if you are instituting these pedagogies of expression, and if you have journals, then you together can maybe in a few years' time bring out a collection, because that would help other teachers. Your story would help, your story as teachers would help other teachers also to institute this pedagogy.
Thank you for your suggestion. And my idea is we should collect all the information and put them on the TownCon website. What do you think, Savita? Yeah, Alito has, he didn't write that much, but we got, his videos and some pieces of writing, and of course, you have, published some articles, Savita, and others too, I think. So we put all the information together. Then others can refer to them.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. So thank you everyone for attending this event. First of all, thank you, Professor Kyoko, for proposing this particular event, and the HoundCon team for this whole project, first of all, and trying to see how we can in fact promote this kind of work and readership among the Goans. I would like to also thank the head of the department, Professor Ganesha Somyaji, for accepting the proposal and giving the permission to go ahead and conduct this event. A big thank you for the HoundCon authors who, despite of being this, this is the end of the semester, I know, and we all have lots of classes and syllabus to complete and, different things happening, yet giving this time over here and sharing the experience and your journey with, writing the whole article, your experience with Professor Alito, his methodology, his teaching methods. Thank you very much. And also I would like to thank
all the students from university who had attended, the other friends and all the other audience who was present and attended and made this event a success. I've put a list over here in the chat box of where the book is available. The book is also put up on Amazon, but in case you're not able to place an order from where you are located at, you can drop your address to my email ID, and a copy of the book will be posted to you. My email address is also here.
I would like to thank Rico Frederick Noronha, the publisher. Yes. I think I should be but Rico, would you like to say something? He shared that URL of Facebook, Hong Kong group with us.
And we have the Marathi translation done by Vishram Gupte and published by Sanjana Publications. And this is the English copy. So you can ask for any one of these copies that are available.
So thank you everybody after us today, and it was really a wonderful opportunity for us, to share all the stories. And I really wish that Alito would be here with us, but we will carry on his legacy, definitely. So please, Savita.
Yes. So yes, I'll thank everyone.
Okay, so see you then.
Yeah.
Maybe Hong Kong team, please, stay, and maybe we can, speak a little bit. Please.